How you doing?
Before things get started, there's 8.
Y'all got a fan thing going on?
Those are, yes, but that one up there is yours. I didn't know that. Lori?
Ooh, 2 of them.
I thought she came in talking about CETA before, when she came in. Yeah, I know we talked about it, but I just didn't remember.
But CW and K.
Hey, sorry. I was in the mode. Hey, it's okay.
See, I didn't connect that. Okay. So she came in today.
Wow. Yeah, she can't. Good. I don't need to go out and get your own or anything.
Nope, not anymore. I'm good. Okay.
Tomorrow night is just an information session.
I'm sure you're busy.
Running
Running around.
Because she's gonna with some information. I'm gonna tell her, I need some pictures.
Because she gave the picture I got for you. She gave you the thing so back and it was being honored by the town council.
Right.
Apex.
Right.
For his service as an
I
electrician.
wonder if that was
Yeah. I made all kinds of calls, by the way, just by myself. It was great. I love it.
We did one on our own.
Yeah.
I mean, I never like big things either.
You don't have
I was ready to do
actually.
What I figured out is when he sent me the email,
Frank, just plug the engine. We're gonna do this. That's the only, we didn't go over him real fast, so.
I'm an enthusiast of that topic, so I probably provided more than
okay. I'm glad you were there.
It'd be a bad deal for us.
No, not at all. Not at all. I like the new color.
Well, that's gonna change.
Okay.
So with branding,
yeah.
I don't know why we bought them for everybody.
Yep.
And
We really need.
yeah, and you really don't need
We should have had some kind of
your name and register and the town seal or whatever, and big enough.
What's the she
Otherwise, it could
Yep. Yep.
well, the branding.
Well, they just don't want to bring it up again. Wait
This
a
our
minute, I
town
have
clerk.
met you before.
Yeah.
I came to her retirement party.
That's probably where I saw you. Now that I look at your face.
Okay.
We don't have a write-up on your
The rain is see, so baby, can you find some stuff you remember that? For next year, if you this year, right? Is it too late
Yeah,
for this year?
for this year. Because I'm trying to find something to put. I got another poster. But I don't have anything to put.
Let me dig.
Up with nothing on it.
Stuff down in the basement box. You just dig. Okay, Donna's up here.
Oh,
All the creative people all tell all the stories.
Buy like 100 of them for like $50. So it's like,
You and Audrey joined in the land of the land.
we'll need thousands if we're gonna do it. Cool, good. Okay. I figure maybe not everybody, just most people, most of us, if we were interested. Cool, good. Good, excellent.
We're not gonna do no born ready.
because that's
You just can't wait.
It's been every single time.
Okay.
Well, he didn't ask last time. Last time I didn't do it.
He didn't ask me. He was sick last time. Oh, did you pour me water? Thank you. Somebody pour me water. Here's those things cool. My daughter got me buying this stuff.
Fancy. We're ready.
Already?
Oh,
Here we
don't
go.
say it when you don't ask.
He looked at me. He looked at me.
I did. That's one way I go. Good evening.
Wow, thank you for showing up tonight. I mean, you could have been anywhere in the world when you chose to come to Apex Town Council meeting, so I really appreciate that. On behalf of our town council and staff, welcome to our scheduled town council meeting for February 4th, 2020. Welcome those who have joined us live stream via YouTube, and I will now call the meeting to order. We're starting the meeting with an invocation, and I want to read this first. The town of Apex values and celebrates diversity and inclusion. We see diversity as a strength that binds our community together. Inviting members from different faith communities to deliver an invocation at the beginning of our council meetings supports this unity. Recognizing that not everyone practices the same traditions, we welcome you to have a private moment of silence during this time. And what I want to do right now is just take a moment of silence just to kind of think about the good things we have in life, the great time we have here in the town of Apex, and the great people that lead this town, staff, and our council, and you citizens who help make this a great place to live in America. So let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, a few things before we get started. If you would like to follow along on our agenda, there are agendas outside the door to the left on the podium, and also you can follow along on your smartphone or electronic device. Go to apexnc.org and follow along, and just go to our town council page under the agendas tab. If you plan to speak during a public forum or public hearing, please make sure you come to my right and see Ms. Donna Hosh, our town clerk, and sign up on the appropriate sheet. And please follow the public speaking rules and procedures as printed. And at this time, we will go ahead and move into our presentations. And we'll start with Ann Taswell, North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center presentation to recognize Town of Apex for achieving the gold level designation under Solar Smart.
Well, it's my great pleasure to be here this evening to present the Town of Apex and you, its elected officials, Mayor Jacques, Mayor Pro Tem Nicole, Council members Brett and Audra and Terry. This recognition as a gold level Soul Smart community. My name is Ann Taswell, and I'm with the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center, which is part of the College of Engineering at NC State University. As a public service center at the university, our mission is to advance a sustainable energy economy by educating, demonstrating, and providing support for clean energy technologies, policies, and practices. I'm the Center's Special Projects Program Manager, and one of my special projects over the past 6 months or so has been working with the Town of Apex on achieving its Soul Smart designation. Soul Smart is a national program that's sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy and administered by the Solar Foundation, the National League of Cities, and the ICMA, the International Council of City and County Managers. The purpose of it is to recognize local governments for their efforts at reducing the barriers to the adoption of solar energy. Renewable energy, such as solar photovoltaics or solar PV, is growing rapidly and is set to eclipse the power generated by coal and nuclear by next year. The price of solar, the hard cost, by that I mean like the cost of the panels, has dropped over 70% over the past decade. What's been more stubborn to reduce the costs on is what's called the soft costs. These soft costs can include things like permitting and the cost of labor to spend the time in getting a solar permit for residential or commercial installations. So these non-hardware costs of, or soft costs of going solar now represent about 40% of the cost of installing solar panels at your home or business. And some of these soft costs, particularly permit fees and those types of things, are things that are really within the purview of local government. So hence the idea of having this recognition program for leaders that have really stepped up, communities that have stepped up across the country. The town of Apex is going to be joining close to 350 communities across the country, including 7 in North Carolina, who have made strides in reducing these soft costs. Apex has earned the gold level designation, which is the highest level, with a special recognition in permitting and inspections. So to receive this additional special recognition in permitting and inspections, I had the pleasure of working with Drew, as well as Rudy Baker and town staff in permitting and inspection, as well as other staff across the center, who created an online, some of y'all's accomplishment in this area was creating an online permit checklist and really a solar landing page for your citizens and businesses to make it easier for them and to make things more transparent about how to get solar on their roof or business. Also, you all reviewed your local zoning codes and identified restrictions that may have unintentionally made it more difficult to put solar on roofs. You all cross-trained both inspection and permitting staff on solar PV, and then you also provided a streamlined permitting pathway for small PV systems. One I want to add that does not require any permit fees. Even before I began working with you all on solar, you all had already waived the permit fees for solar PV, which is really commendable. I really want to thank you for your leadership in making it easier for businesses and residents of this town to go solar and to be putting your money where your mouth is by installing almost 0.5 megawatt of solar PV on your town facilities' roofs. It's really admirable, and I hope that in the future I have the opportunity to work with you again on meeting some of your clean energy goals. So at this time, I'd really like to present, I guess, the mayor with this plaque, and I hope Drew can take a picture because our communications person wasn't able to come tonight. And I guess we can, I don't know, you all tell me what's the best place.
Can we all? On this one?
Photographer, you'll figure it out.
And can I request Jensen here too to come?
It's upside down.
Come on.
Come on, Bill. You've been outvoted. Come on, Mr.
So, Dan, if I'm correct, we are one of 4 communities in the state that are gold level. So this is a big achievement for y'all. And you're going to have to stand a little closer like you like each other. There we go. Get the monitor out of the way. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep smiling. All right, that's the winner.
All right. Thank you.
Boys versus girls there.
Thanks, Bill, for coming.
And I was going to recognize former town councilman Bill Jensen, but Drew beat me to it. So thank you for your great work over the years for advancing solar projects in our town. We now move to the next presentation. I want to first recognize one of our staff members, Ms. Donna Hush, for all the work she has done for recognizing our Black History Month. And if you haven't seen it already, if you walk downstairs, you will see the amazing display and history of our town. So, Ms. Donna, thank you for your great work. So at this time, I want to make my first proclamation presentation as mayor to the Matthews family, honoring C.W. Matthews. So if you would join me up here, I'll come down here. Karen, by the way, was a staff member with us for many years, done amazing work here, so I thank you for bringing this to our attention. So God bless your family. You guys have done tremendous work in town. You're just great man. So I want to read this proclamation Honoring Columbo Wayland Matthews, whereas Columbo Wayland C.W. Matthews was born in the Matthews community to James H. and Susan Matthews, and whereas C.W. was a stabilizing influence to the family and to the community, becoming known as a prominent land investor and farmer, and actively involved in a railroad community of Apex, where lumber products were article of trade, and whereas C.W. worked vigorously to maintain and promote African American culture, having served as a role model in economic, cultural, and spiritual development of the town of Apex, and Mike Long. Whereas C.W. was the first African American business owner in Apex to open a general store in the 1880s, and I never knew that. Was a deacon, member, trustee, and original deacon of 1911, and the founder of Mount Zion Baptist Church, and served on the citizen committee under the leadership of Reverend Matthew Brown, and was charged with organizing and building a private school adjacent to the Christian church located on Center Street to serve African American children grades 1 through 6. Was that Christian Home Church? Yes. And was named founding trustee of Apex Normal and Collegiate Institute from 1896 to 1913, and contributed to the reorganization of Mason's Wisdom Lodge, Masonic Lodge, number 34, and named master, having been first chartered in 1880 by Reverend Matthew Brown, first master of African American Lodge. And whereas C.W. was a craftsman builder, brick mason, and business owner, and after the 1911 fire that destroyed businesses in downtown Apex, was strongly motivated to assist the town in replacing framed commercial structures and fireproof brick buildings. That's big. Downtown Apex. Our downtown. That's big. Whereas by 1913, it has been noted that the 100 block of South Salem Street was built with pressed brick front stores. 1910 and 1915 historical data names. C.W. Matthews, owner and builder of the lot facing Haywood Road, currently 121 North Salem Street, featuring a stucco front and recognized as the first building in Apex's central business district owned by an African American. Wow. And whereas in 1936, the property was bequeathed to C.W.'s son, Porter Matthews. In October 1970, the property formerly occupied by C.W.'s General Store and Holland Drugs was purchased by Horton's Hardware, and was also occupied by numerous restaurants. And whereas after the death of former Mayor Eugene Sturgeon, the Sturgeon land was placed in the hands of a trustee. C.W. having realized the value of the land, purchased the land at 204 North Mason Street for his home, and used it as a model structure to build other replica homes in Raleigh, all featuring a front porch, sash windows, interior brick chimney, and hand-hewn shingles that decorate the diamond-shaped gable roof, the house being identified as the Sloop Jones House. And whereas evidence that C.W. was civic-minded and cared for the town was found in the Board of Commissioners, August 4, 1919 minutes, which states, quote, heavy rains made Salem Street impassable, and the town paid C.W. Matthews and his team to work the road back in shape, and having worked for 2 days, was paid $14, end quote. Now, therefore, I, Jacques K. Gilman, Mayor of the town of Apex, North Carolina, extend the town's gratitude for the contributions of Columbo Wayland Matthews, a valued citizen characterized for a significant role that enriched the greater Apex community and gave us a solid foundation upon which we stand proud today. And I'm signed Jacques K. Gilman, Mayor of Apex.
Gather on in together.
That's all right. It's time.
Okay. All right, big smile down there. All right, here we go. One more. Great. Nice smile. That's a great one.
Okay. We now move to our third presentation, and it's Bo Howell's Triangle Land Conservancy.
Hey there, good evening. Get that flat. Excuse me, thank you for having me. My name is Bo Howes. I'm with the Triangle Land Conservancy. I'm here to talk about the Jordan Lake Watershed Conservation Strategy. First, I would like to talk a little bit about Triangle Land Conservancy and introduce a couple people. Jack Blackmer, a member of our board, is here with me. And then Matt Strobel, who is an Apex resident and a member of our development committee, is also here with me today. Triangle Land Conservancy started in 1983. We're 35 years old, and we've conserved over 20,000 acres in the Triangle in that time period. What's here on the screen is our mission statement. Now, in our mission statement, one of there are 4 public benefits. So we strive to create a healthier and more vibrant Triangle region by safeguarding clean water, by protecting natural habitats, by supporting family farms and food, and by connecting people with nature. So all the projects that we do have something to do with one of those 4 benefits. We own over 6,000 acres in the Triangle. We have 7 or 6 open nature preserves. 7th open nature preserve will be opening in April. We also have a set of lofty goals from our strategic plan. By 2025, we want to conserve and permanently protect 25,000 acres, so we have about 5,000 acres to go. We are on track. We started this strategic action plan in 2018, and we've hit our marks each year since then. So that's we're quite happy about that. But it's a lofty goal, and you have to have that. I want to take one step back though and look at there are 4 reports that came out in December. And I just want to make sure y'all knew where we were with each one. There's this North Carolina Policy Collaboratory Report. That collaboratory report came out from UNC Chapel Hill. The legislature created the NC Collaboratory when they were trying to figure out what to do other than solar bees and other things to do in Jordan Lake to help clean it up. So they came up with this collaboratory. It issued a report. That report's in the hands of the legislature. And I don't know when they're going to do anything with it, but that's there, and there's a lot we could talk about with that report. The members of the collaboratory are involved with much of the Jordan Lake One Water initiative that we've been involved with, but that report's there and out there waiting for us. There's also this New Hope Landscape Conservation Plan. We never name anything easily. We have lots of words in them. This is a connectivity plan, so this really talks about places where what we call indicator species, so bobcats, box turtles, and four-toed salamanders, where they live. You have to take, they require fairly specific habitat. Well, as the habitat gets fragmented, so you have some living here, if there's no way for them to get back and forth, no way for them to do anything, those populations are going to, they're going to become non-viable as they're separated. That plan puts a real point of emphasis on those lands that make connectivity. That's a great plan. We've talked about it enough. We can talk about what I really want to talk about, though, is the Jordan Lake One Water and the Jordan Lake Watershed Conservation Strategy. To do that, we need to take one more step back. The Upper Neuse Clean Water Initiative. This is a 14-year-old program. It was started in 2006 by Mayor Meeker in Raleigh. Apex isn't in the news, clearly. Apex is in the Cape Fear. But this voluntary program that Raleigh put together in 2006, it's a national model. And so this plan that I'm presenting to you tonight is based on this plan. So I wanted to give you some history on this, give you some ideas about what happens. In the 14 years it's been in existence, we've done 114 different projects, we being the different partners. So Triangle Land Conservancy has done some of those. There's the River Association, there's Tar River Land Conservancy, other groups are involved in this as well. But 114 different projects, protected 111 miles of stream, 10,000 acres of land. key thing for many people within local government, a 7-to-1 leverage ratio. So any project we do, virtually every project we do, has some landowner donation involved in it. It has money coming in it from the state, from the county, from another municipality. So you get it's more than a 7-to-1 ratio. When Clean Water Management Trust Fund was funded at a much higher level, that number was actually much higher. That's gone down. The way Raleigh funds this program is 15 cents per 1,000 gallons on a watershed protection fee, and that shows up in people's water bill every month. It translates to about $5 per person or per water bill per year, right? So it's they've only had one complaint, the city, about the watershed protection fee, and that was somebody who had misplaced a decimal point and thought that they were doing a much greater amount annually than the $5. So it's roughly $5 a year. So relatively small, but it is something that you all have to decide. We're going to put an additional fee. Everybody, people will notice that fee. It's something you have to think about. Anyway, it's a tremendously successful program. It also is run, the City of Raleigh has a contract with the Conservation Trust for North Carolina. That organization administers the program for it. Twice a year, we're allowed to submit applications for projects to that program, and we compete with other entities who bring projects to them. And it's a GIS-based model, so there is a model score that comes out. That you have to have a minimum score in order to apply, and then you're ranked and you're competing against other projects. So that's the plan that we want to base our new plan on. This is a fuzzy picture of our strategic action plan. In the middle of the far side says draft design and develop an Upper Cape Fear conservation plan. So 2 years ago, that's what we were calling Jordan Lake One Water, or the Jordan Lake Watershed Conservation Strategy. It's been on our books for years to develop this project outside of just the Upper Neuse. This is a map that shows you the study area that we've been working on. So the Triangle Land Conservancy, we work in the 6 counties that were defined by the Triangle J Council of Governments in 1983. The purple outline there is the watershed we're talking about. That's everything that drains into Jordan Lake. And so it goes outside of Wake and Orange and Durham, Chatham County. It goes into Alamance and Guilford. It goes well beyond that. So it's a wide area. This is what the land use looks like right now. So there's a lot of green. You can see things where Greensboro is. You can see where Mebane and High Point and those places, or not High Point, you can see High Point, but that's not in the study here. You can see Mebane, you can see Chapel Hill. Those places are not really good for conservation and certainly wouldn't do any good for Jordan Lake. But the rest of this, the green things, these are places that could be conserved and would help promote the health of Jordan Lake. This is where the Upper Neuse one is very different from the one for the Upper Cape Fear. That's the study area. You can see the counties. There are 27 municipalities that draw water from the lake. There's nowhere near that in the Upper Neuse, and the Upper Neuse doesn't. There's one major funder, which is Raleigh. So that's why it was relatively easy for Mayor Meeker in 2006. Relatively speaking, to realize and see this was something he really wanted to do and put it through. You have all these different municipalities that will need to get on board as well. Cary is talking about getting on board. They have met last week, and their staff is in favor of it, and so there is real momentum for this kind of program. I started working at Triangle Lands Conservancy in 2008, and on my second day, the executive director came to me and said, we need to expand this program from the Neuse to the Cape Fear, and here it is 12 years later. I'm either doing a really poor job or it's just taken that long to wrangle everybody together. So we have this big, diverse area. But the nice thing about it is if we use a model where there's a third-party administrator, Conservation Trust for North Carolina, Triangle J Council of Governments, one of those kind of places, they would be able to administer these funds in a way that everybody could be comfortable with, hopefully. So how do you do it? Well, wetlands filter water as it goes into the streams, into the rivers, into Jordan Lake. 63% of nitrogen, 45% of phosphorus. They retain all that, 94% of the sediments. They do a great job. So it's a key component of this concept of the one water strategy that you can use wetlands. It's not regulatory. It's not imposing regulations on a farmer in Guilford County saying you can't do this, you can't do that. This is something where we can conserve their land and manage that use without having to step in and say, no, you can't do this. It's a market-based thing. You pay a fair market value for either the conservation easement or the land itself. If you don't pay fair market value, the landowner gets a significant tax contribution, tax deduction, federal tax deduction. There used to be a state tax credit that's gone, but it may come back. So anyway, you use the wetlands to act as a natural filter for this water. It's also, right now, that study area, 70% of it is comprised of farms, fields, wetlands, forest. So there's a huge opportunity. Only 8% is protected at this time, 92% unprotected. So you have a vast amount of land that is eligible for protection that would do a lot of good to help protect Jordan Lake. When you create this model, when we created this model, we looked at the different types of land that's upstream from the lake. You have water sources, you have uplands, so they're further up. You have infiltration and retention, that is wetland areas. And then you have vulnerable areas. That's a kind of terrible picture of some industrial space, but it's a very vulnerable space. If you conserve that place, if you replant it with a herbaceous layer or replant it with trees, that's going to actively take sediment, phosphorus, nitrates out of the system. So those four are weighted in the GIS model. This is this geeky GIS system. I'm not the GIS guy. Y'all probably have one on staff, and they would understand exactly what we're talking about. I don't know, maybe you are. Original data, the original data layers come in. We do some working on the objective scores. We work on the goal scores, and then we produce this model score. So each parcel comes up with a number at the end of the day that tells you, is it a good piece is it a priority for conservation? Now it's funny because it's a geeky GIS thing. It's not like it's a 1 to 10 score. To get funding for the Upper News Clean Water Initiative, you got to score like a 4.23 or something crazy like that, and the maximum score is like 7.25. And it's it has to do with the important parts of the property and because a parcel is not all one piece, not all one habitat. Anyway, it is a science-based. It is an open. We open up the data layer so you can see what it is we use to weight the different pieces of property. That's a map that shows you where the highest priority parcels are. So the orange parts are the highest priority parcels. So the stuff that's in light green is already protected. So you look at this stuff right around Jordan Lake, the near area, that's all pretty much owned by the Army Corps of Engineers, managed by Wildlife Resources Commission or the state parks. And again, other places like Cane Creek upstream in Orange County, most of that is protected by the Orange Water and Sewer Authority. The orange stuff, though, is the high, and there's a lot of it left. Now, you look where Burlington is, you look where Greensboro is. You're not going to do conservation in those places. You're going to do it out in the outside areas where it'll have the highest effect. So that's the map that shows you where the conservation work should include. And you look at where it is coming. The water actually flows west out of Apex into Jordan Lake. Come up with 10,000 parcels. It's a lot of parcels. 385,000 acres, right? I think the number is about 2 billion that you need if you're going to protect all those. Y'all can vote that in tonight. It'd be great, but it's not going to happen. We have a much more reasonable expectation. We came up with 35,000 acres over the next 35 years. When we do this project, when Triangle Land Conservancy does a project, we talk to the landowner, we talk about their goals for the property, whether they want to sell the property in fee, whether they want to have a conservation easement on the property, which would restrict the uses, would make it so they wouldn't be able to subdivide the property, wouldn't clear trees next to the streams, that kind of thing. Much more reasonable to get to 35,000 acres over the next 35 years. So what does that mean? How do you fund that? Well, if you took an average of 60 cents per month, 66 cents per month on each customer's bill, there are roughly 700,000 of those in the entire study area. You get $24 million a year, and that's an awful lot of money to spend on land conservation. You could really do a significant amount of work. I'm not sure the number that Cary is considering for their fee. The Environmental Finance Center at UNC has done an extensive number of surveys, or a number of, they've created some dashboards that will show you, if you put 2 cents on, 3 cents on, 4, whatever the number is, and it'll show you at the end of the day how much money you get back out, how much money you can spend on land conservation. So that's how we fund this. So then how can you help? Well, you can implement a water management fee. You can help us set up the program, come up with something that we have a pretty good framework that we like with this Upper News Clean Water Initiative, but we'd be glad to take, there are a lot more municipalities that would be involved in this one, so we need to have some give and take to figure out how different councils would be comfortable with going into this thing. You can share the report I gave. Everybody has a copy of that. We have more if you need them. That's available on our website as well. And you can encourage other municipalities to participate. Councilman Mahaffey came to a presentation we did. That's how I ended up here, because presentation that we had done in Orange County, and he's been talking with Mayor Heminger of Chapel Hill. She's been a big proponent of this, and so probably for the last 2 years we've been working closely with her to try and gain momentum for this program. So that's what I have for you tonight. Glad to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
With the Upper News one, I think the critique that we would get, besides the money, people having to pay more money, is I'm guessing almost every project is going to be outside of Apex and outside of Wake County. And is that the case for the Upper News as well? Are they mostly outside of Raleigh? Are they doing the same thing? Or
they are outside of Raleigh. There's a fairly significant portion that is in Wake County. We've applied for 3 projects. Twice a year we get to apply. We applied for 3 of the projects in Wake County this year. It's spending money upstream, and that's that. But that's where you affect the greatest amount of gain for the city. With Raleigh, and the reason why Mayor Meeker, what really prompted him to do it was they were going to have to do a major redesign, and they were going to have to change the wastewater treatment plant. And they were looking at hundreds of millions of dollars if they didn't slow down the amount of sedimentation, the amount of stuff that was coming into Falls Lake. And frankly, y'all are in a similar situation in terms of Jordan Lake and how bad it is. The engineers can do a lot of really good things with water treatment plants, and you should have your engineer talk about it and talk about if we add this chemical to the water, if we run it through this filtration system, what you'll find is that this actually is a better bang for the buck, especially if you start talking about the leverage that's associated with it. But yes, it is spent outside of your jurisdiction. That's also one of the reasons why you need to have an outside organization like ours or like Conservation Trust run the program, because you're not allowed to spend money outside of your own county with your city funds.
And just to be clear, the reason, I know we all know this up here, but a bunch of people watching at home or in the audience, the reason we're considering this, we're talking about this, isn't because we're looking to conserve land for conservation's sake, although we are trying to do that. It's because we drink from Jordan Lake. Right. And we're looking to find ways to impact the water quality in Jordan Lake and help improve it. So that's our interest here, is getting clean drinking water. And actually, Apex has spent, I believe, last year, the year before, $500,000 or something. Wasn't there something we did around the plants and circulating the water?
We've done some mixing.
Mixing, yeah. Yeah, there's some projects. So we've spent money before at the source where we get our water to try to improve the quality of it. And this, or some effort like this, is a way to impact the quality of the water coming into Jordan Lake and help it out. And frankly, I want to be part of the solution here. This is in our interest as consumers of the water, that we want to make sure our water is clean.
And this would be asking Apex residents to invest money in land conservation upstream.
Yes.
Which would then impact our water supply, water quality.
Exactly. Yeah, at its core, that's the thing. But also asking Cary residents, also asking Orange Water and Sewer Authority, also asking Pittsboro, 27 municipalities, and we're going to all of them. And the more somebody has to go first. It might be Carrie, but that's, it's a shared system. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Now, Ms. Donna, is that microphone on? You know, it's right. Okay.
It is on.
It does.
It goes a little tall. I got to lean into it.
Oh, no, so and I can be a soft talker too.
Yeah.
Apologies if it, yeah.
Just to add the discussion a little bit, I mean, I've also gotten the impression that there's a conflict here because the Jordan Lake has a huge watershed with tons of municipalities, Alamance, all the way down there that are far removed from Jordan Lake itself. And they're wondering, why do we have to pay to help clean up and tighten our standards for water quality for a lake that's, and we don't use it, we're not near it, we don't drink from it, it's not in our interest at all. So why is it on us to clean this? So they're having that kind of end of it. And then, like you said, there's people down here like, well, why should we have to pay to clean up when, the problem is way upstream? They're the ones polluting. Why shouldn't they clean it? So there's this sort of conflict between the two areas. And the fact of the matter is we all have to come together. We all have to contribute. They shouldn't be polluting, but we also, it's in our interest as consumers of the water. We want our water to be clean. So it's on us as well to participate in the system. And all the other municipalities in the area are doing it. Cary's about to do it. I believe Morrisville's doing it. Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh in a separate, watershed, but they also have a similar program. So I would be certainly, I'll just put it this way, I want to be part of the solution here. So.
Alamance County has been intensely involved in the Jordan Lake One Water Initiative. Their county board chair their county board chair has been so Alamance County, their county board chair has been involved in this project all along, and is very enthusiastic of putting money into making a solution. So we've been frankly pleasantly surprised that they were willing to do that. It was it's the first time they've come to any of those meetings.
Have you worked with the municipalities and the counties with their buffers and is that part of the plan as well?
So that's part of the One Water solution. So the One Water solution has a number of goals that are associated with it, but part of it is that. So there's this regulatory approach. This is a component of the Jordan Lake One Water. So there's a regulatory approach where you can look at buffers on streams. You can look at what the county does, what the city does. There are rules about who can do what, but those things are a component to it. This is another component to it. When we do a project, there's a much more robust buffer on any of the streams that are within the project area than what's required under any of the county regulations. But it's voluntary. We work with willing landowners. We never work with there's no condemnation. There's no eminent domain. None of those things. It is a transactional based project.
So you spoke a lot about towns and cities, and then just mentioned one county. So what are the next steps that you all envision around engaging people to work together within the counties and in the cities and towns?
Yeah. Fantastic. We are going. We being this is not just Triangle Land Conservancy. This is a group, the Jordan Lake One Water Group, primarily headed by the Triangle J Council of Governments, but a number of other not-for-profits and a number of municipalities and counties and cities. So some of them have been more involved than others, but we're making an effort to go to each municipality. So there's 27. There's 10 counties. We'll go to all of them, and we'll talk to all of them. Not all of them want to listen. Not all of them are as hospitable as you all in getting us on the agenda. But no, we are going to be talking to everyone. Durham already has a fee. It's slightly different because they're split. They're in both watersheds, but they have a fee, and they also have each year the county puts $500,000 into land conservation, in addition to a fee that generates, I think, $250,000 or so each year, that is administered very similarly to the Upper News Clean Water Initiative.
And would this be an ongoing investment from our residents? There's no time limitation on it.
Well, we have the 35 years and 30. It's something that's not going to go away. We are going to continue to progress in this state, and we are very attractive to people moving here, which is great for us in a lot of ways. But eventually we're going to run out of water. I mean, we don't have a quantity issue very frequently right now, but I mean, I don't know how long anybody's lived here, but if you lived here through any of the droughts, it can be a quantity issue. It's really a quality issue that we're talking about here, but it can be a quantity issue.
All right,
Okay.
any other questions?
Great, thank you again. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you, Ryan, and we're available to meet with staff and talk to you at any time.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Go.
All right. All right, we now move into our consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Do I have a motion to set the consent agenda as
I'll
is?
make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, motion second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, we move on to setting the meeting agenda, and we all have a printed agenda in front of us. I know we had one add-on. Mr. Mann?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We'd like to add a second closed session. So you have that cover sheet in front of you. And that's to discuss land acquisition.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to set the regular agenda with the add-on item for closed session.
I second it.
motion second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, the agenda is set. All right. We now move to our public forum. And friendly reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit for each speaker. There is a series of lights for you to follow in 3 minutes, green, yellow, and red. At red, you need to start closing out your presentation and also give us your name and address before presenting. The list is coming to me now. Thank you. All right, we have one person on public forum, Ms. Lindsay Logan, if you would come up, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Town Council. My name is Lindsay Logan, and I live at 319 Pine Nut Lane. I've returned to speak with you tonight regarding a previous request I made in October and November of last year. And that request was that the Town Council review and consider modifying Municipal Ordinance 1428, playing upon streets, sidewalks, and public places. In November, I spoke to Town Council about the difficulties perpetuated by a zealous interpretation of this ordinance, as brought forth by a neighbor. The neighbor had made complaints to law enforcement for what he felt was excessive playing outside, in the street, and sometimes even crossing the street. There was a memorandum that was composed for you to review tonight, including 4 options with regards to this ordinance. What I wanted to discuss was just the aspects of our neighborhood in Scotts Mill in particular. On any given day, you can see children outside enjoying outdoor play with friends and neighbors. We're conveniently located next to a top-rated elementary school, which is within walking distance. Having a neighborhood full of children outside playing is arguably one of the most appealing aspects of living in Scotts Mill. We recognize the importance of parental supervision and safety, and in no way are advocating for a lack of either, nor have we advocated for children to play in the street so as to impede traffic. They should be able to safely and legally play outside, riding bikes, scooters, walking, even running to each other's homes, without fear of being in violation of a town ordinance. In the options that were presented before you in the memorandum, the following options were: 1, to propose no change to the current ordinance. In theory, riding bikes, playing outside, riding scooters is not in violation directly of this ordinance. So therefore, it would say that there doesn't need to be a change. However, with the way that it's currently worded, it seems like there will be further confusion and continued difficulties as this neighbor has requested a specific interpretation in writing from law enforcement on how they view this ordinance. Option 2 before you was discussing amending the ordinance to be more permissive. It's not that we were asking for a more permissive interpretation. At one point, we were asking to differentiate between residential streets versus public streets, and learning that all streets are public. We don't live in a private gated community, so the sidewalks therefore are owned by the town. The street in front of our driveway is owned by the town. So we're not looking necessarily for it to be more permissive. I think under this option, they also discussed the idea of play streets, which is good in theory. There are some towns and communities that have those. But again, this issue goes back to being able to play in front of your residents, with adult supervision. It doesn't really address that there's not an actual play area available to the children in Apex or in our neighborhood. Option 3, perhaps a little bit more concerning, was amending the ordinance to be more restrictive. In my opinion, this would be the least favorable option. As stated before, according to psychologist and researcher and author on resiliency, Dr. Michael Unger, seeking as much safety as possible rather than what is necessary not only impacts our quality of life, but may also have secondary harmful effects to the psychosocial development of our children. Children need the opportunity to play outside with reasonable risk to help them develop better communication skills, conflict resolution, and problem solving, and also to enhance community cohesion. The fourth option was repealing the ordinance altogether, and basically reverting back to what state statute states, is that it's not permittable to play in the street if you're impeding traffic or posing a risk to safety. At that point, law enforcement would rely on the state statute and come and determine if that statute has been violated. Other than that, in conclusion, it seems that the opinion of the memorandum was that the current ordinance does not prohibit the safe use of streets and sidewalks for riding of bicycles, in addition to other safe forms of recreation like riding scooters. We ask that you thoroughly consider these 4 options and think of the children and promoting what is in their best interest and health in Apex, including to continue to support outside play and not make it more restrictive for the children or the parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we now move to our public forum. Public forum allows the public an opportunity to address the town council. Speakers requested not to.
That was public forum.
I'm sorry, public hearing, excuse me. I'm sorry. So we'll go ahead and move into that right now. And remember, we will not respond to anything if anybody plans to speak during a public forum. Public hearing, excuse me. We'll move now to public hearing 1 by Diane Ken, Planning and Community Development Director, possible motion to adopt an ordinance of course of annexation, number 675.
Okay, just 1 second. He's getting the right one up here. Okay. So just to orient you to the location, this is Roberts Road, near the northernmost part of our jurisdiction. Across the street is Cary jurisdiction. This property is the approved Roberts Crossing subdivision, which was approved previously for townhomes. They are requesting annexation in order to get public utilities, and staff does recommend approval.
Any questions? All right, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and open up public hearing. At this time, we have no one signed up for public hearing, so I'll close public hearing and request the matter back to council for possible motion.
Motion approved?
I second it.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. All right, we now move on to no old business. We now move to unfinished business. And this is possible motion to the staff to prepare for council consideration for amendments to the Town of Apex Code of Ordinances relative to playing upon streets, presented by Manager Drew Havens.
Thank you.
So Ms. Logan did a great job of framing the issue before you tonight. So this is a follow-up to her initial appeal to the council, which was back in November. We had a change in council leadership, and we decided to wait and give staff a chance to review ordinances, including what other cities and towns do. you received a memo from me at the end of December that explained our current ordinance, told you, based on research by our legal department, what other cities and towns do. And we did come to 4 options that we're presenting for your consideration tonight. What you have in front of you in the PowerPoint slides is just a recap, basically, of what's in the memo. So our current ordinance does say that no person shall play any game upon any street or use any street for the purpose of recreation. That's the first part of it. Sections B and C lay out when it is okay to play in streets. So the limited cul-de-sac streets, that was a section that was added when there was initially some resistance to the overall, just the ban on playing in the streets. So they set up a way for people in these low traffic streets or no traffic streets to be able to play under certain circumstances. And then Section D talks about playing on sidewalks or in public places. Again, not to impede traffic and so on. You'll see those conditions there. We also have in our ordinances in Section 1811, so obstruction. So it's not legal. So if you wanted to set up a basketball goal or a hockey net in front of your house on the street, you can't do that. Whether or not you have that playing in the street ordinance, you can't, because you can't obstruct the street. Streets are designed to convey motor vehicles and bicycles and so on, so forms of transportation. Similar, 1812 is about sidewalks. You can't block sidewalks. Then I just referred to state statutes. So again, absent our ordinance, absent the ordinance in 1428, we have the tools to say you can't obstruct the street. You can't lie in the street. You can't stand in the street. You really can't cross the street other than at crosswalks in such a manner as to impede traffic. So again, the state statutes recognize that streets are for vehicles. And then 160A, 296 just says that you all have the authority to regulate your streets, and the authority and actually the duty to regulate your streets. So we came up with the 4 options. The first one is don't change a thing, just leave it the way it is. The concern that we have is it makes a suggestion that we feel that playing in the streets is safe. I grew up playing in the street. I lived to tell about it. I played baseball, I played football. I didn't play tackle football like the mayor did. He was telling me that today. He played tackle football in the street, which is a little bit too hardcore for me.
It was a very short game.
So we certainly don't want to give the appearance that we're saying it's safe to play in a place where there are motor vehicles that are designed to carry motor vehicles. Mentioned here, enforcement can be a little bit difficult, especially in the current ordinance way it's set up with aspects of supervision, what's direct supervision, what's adequate. It can lead to some difficulties in interpretation. Another option is you could amend the ordinance to be more permissive. Again, we would still, even if you did that, we would still rely on state statutes. So you still couldn't set up your hockey nets. You still couldn't block the flow of vehicular traffic. And again, making it more permissive would seem to say that we think it's safe to play in a street. And public safety and engineering staff here just don't believe that to be the case. Option 3 was to amend the ordinance to be more restrictive, which is to remove B and C. So revert back to the ordinance the way it originally was. So take out the reference to the limited cul-de-sac streets where we're saying right now it's okay to play in those streets. And again, that would then say we're kind of removing the appearance that we're saying it's safe to play on a street. And then option 4 would be just to completely repeal that section of the ordinance, 1428. Take it out altogether. The police then, if called to enforce, would rely on the other ordinances that I referred to about putting things in the street and blocking it, or to state statute that says you can't impede the flow of traffic. So happy to try to answer any questions. Those are the 4 we came up with. Certainly, if you have additional options you want to direct us with. So what we're looking for tonight from the council is, what do you want to do? And we're not taking a motion to approve an ordinance amendment, because we just need to know what ordinance amendment, if any, you would like us to create and bring back to you at a future meeting for adoption or consideration.
My personal preference is to define what direct supervision means, so that there is a surety when a police officer comes up, what's going on. I think if we repeal this completely, or we become more permissive, I don't want to have a child's death on my hands from doing any of this. And I understand saying, your child needs to learn and needs to be in a certain, needs to be in a situation to be able to judge themselves. But I also think the parent needs to be there to help them through those situations. So my preference would be to define that direct supervision, and I do have wording if y'all are interested in something like that.
Can I ask, you have a question? Oh, no. Can I ask, in the scenario that Mrs. Logan laid out, do you know which of these, how in real life, how the police would react to the different options in place, roughly? Or is it hard to tell?
Our police typically are looking to solve problems and not enforce law. In other words, we don't want to write a ticket, and we don't want to issue a citation. We want to try to solve a problem. So if there is a problem that a neighbor calls about, kids are playing in the street, I can't get to my house, or I'm afraid I'm going to hit a child backing out of my driveway. If there's an instance where neighbors don't want to interact, we have community policing officers that do that, and will talk to the neighbors and say, hey, we have this issue. Your child's been playing in the street. Technically, yeah, it's a violation of the town ordinance. The ordinance is set up to keep the children safe, to Ms. Killingsworth's point, and to allow cars to travel on the streets. Drivers typically are not expecting children or anything to be in the street other than bicycles and people crossing at crosswalks. I see it in my neighborhood. I drive very slow in my neighborhood because I know that there are kids that are out playing hockey in the street. I'm used to that. Not all drivers, even in my neighborhood, are doing that. They're driving, looking at their telephones, and not paying attention to what they're supposed to. That's where our fear is. So, we don't want to enforce, but if we can say, keep it in your yard, and we do, and the police do try to mitigate and mediate, and the mayor has a little bit of experience in being one of those mediators when he was in uniform.
Can I add to that real quick, Brett, your question? The police response is never, as Manager Drew mentioned, it's not the priority is to enforce. We just want to problem solve. And in most cases, it is about mediation and looking at the totality of circumstances to determine what's the best fit, what is the best way to go with this particular scenario. I would say there's discretion all the time with police officers, so they're going to weigh the situation and make sure, if it's repetitive, they probably will look at enforcement if it continues. So, but the goal is not to go out and enforce. Typically police officers don't ride around a neighborhood saying, okay, let me find who's playing in the road. That's not what they do.
Can you share if our police have tried to mediate the situation, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, there has been an attempt at mediation. So they've talked to both parties in this particular case. But again, the conversation began because of a case. This is actually not just for Pine Knot Lane. This is for the entire town. This is not an issue that the police are dealing with on an ongoing basis. This is not a frequent type of complaint.
And I was going to ask the same question. Has there been any, elevated number of calls for this type of scenario?
It's not to my knowledge. I don't have the exact data, but I've not been alerted, even through all these conversations with public safety and engineering, that this has been we've seen a spike in issues.
So I just want.
Weather's been pretty cold.
Yeah, and I'm talking about
last couple of days
for over the years. Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I want to thank you and staff for all the time and effort you've put into researching this, and really done a great job laying out all the options and why things are the way they are. History behind it, I think, is very important here. And Ms. Logan, I want to thank you as well for your advocacy here. I don't know what's going to happen because we haven't. We're talking about this now for the first time as a group. But I hope no matter what happens, you feel like you've been heard and that you've gotten a response. And I'm not sure if you'll be satisfied with the result, but I hope at least that you feel like your comments were heard and responded to appropriately. And looking at the document and at the history of it, I'll just say my preference is going to be for option number 4 to repeal it. And the reason for that is looking at the history here of how this ordinance came about. You pull it up again. It was initially passed in 1973. 2011, we amended it. Now we're talking about it again. It feels like this keeps coming up the past couple of years especially. And I sort of feel like we should get out of the business of trying to specify exactly what to do here and rely on the state statute. And the state statute itself seems pretty clear and enforceable. I worry if we address this now and modify it, we'll be back here in 3 years again talking about it. So my first kind of my first impression, my sense of it is to go with option number 4. I do want to put in a word for play streets as well. That came up a little bit. I think the reason this is coming up is it's one of those things where we all grew up playing in the streets, and as time went on and we all became adults, the world kind of moved to a more safer direction. It's why seatbelt laws are more strict, and why there's car seats today are a lot different than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago when they really weren't car seats. I was strapped in, just given a candy bar and thrown in the front seat when I was 4 or whatever, something like that. So we kind of move in this direction, and then this ordinance kind of reflects that as we get in these issues where the sense of the community kind of moves away from kids playing in the street for a safety reason. And the Play Street thing has sort of been the response to that, the best I can tell. If you look around the country, these Play Street programs have been kind of growing in popularity. And the way it works is it's basically a special use permit that allows a neighborhood to shut down a section of road. And there's criteria based on how far away you are from a park, whether it can't be a major street. And you basically, through a little online application, click a couple buttons, you get approved, and then you can actually shut down your street to play. I'm not going to ask you to go do that today for one incident, but I think it's something to keep in mind if this becomes an issue. I got into a little bit of rabbit hole there, kind of looking into this, and I think it's actually a pretty neat idea. So I'd encourage you guys to check it out as well. So that's kind of my thought, option number 4, and I'd like to hear what everyone else has to think as well.
I can go ahead. I am very conflicted tonight. Ms. Logan came trying to solve a problem which really seems to be between a neighbor's interpretation, policing, her parenting, and what the town is doing. The neighbor didn't come saying, I want to solve a problem that kids aren't saying. She came and tried to solve a problem based on what she's dealing with. And so I think that's why this is so hard, because this is not the person coming to us saying, all this, this is happening in my neighborhood and I'm afraid for the safety of kids. She's trying to solve a problem that's between neighbors in some ways. So, I do have concerns, having been in a cul-de-sac and having been in a house on the way to the cul-de-sac where it's easier to be, and now on a corner, our kids were able to do different things. But I did often wonder, that if somebody had a medical issue driving or wasn't paying attention or something like that, there's not a barrier between that vehicle and that child. Or someone drunk driving, like what happened in another issue with some teenage kids. So I just worry about the motor vehicle and children, and if something like that happens. So I just really don't know what to do. Really, I'm just going to say it. I don't often say that, but I really don't know because I want to solve the problem, but I also don't want to create another problem. If that makes any.
I think option 4 as well. It's my choice.
I'm okay with option 4 as well, and I would just say thank you, Ms. Logan, for bringing the attention. I see the issues of quality of life for children, for parents, for neighbors, for community. I also see safety and health issues as a part of this concern. And, you know, professionally, I work with a lot of children that have disabilities, and some of you all know personally, my brother was in a car accident with a traumatic brain injury when he was 21, and he's been disabled for over 30 years. And the you know, the health consequences of a traumatic brain injury are astronomical. And if I can do anything to prevent that, you know, from another child or family going through that, I'd like to do that. So it's hard. I'm probably going to err on the side of safety just because I see so much about what disabilities, how they impact not only our healthcare system, but also families and the cost that takes a toll on. So whatever we can do to err on the side of safety and quality of life, I think is the answer. And I know that's probably making it as clear as mud for you all. But if you know, if option 4 does that, then fine. I don't know if there's a way to mediate between you and the neighbor, and you've tried. I mean, you know, to me, I would like to offer that as another option. I don't know if there's anyone on staff that can help you with that. I'd be happy to help with that. I don't know if the...
Absolutely, we're willing.
So, okay.
We're receptive to that. I think it is interesting because it's just been us and the neighbor. But I think after hearing kind of different feedback, it's hard having an ordinance that's out there, but the notion is it's probably not going to be enforced. So that kind of goes back to option 4. We already have a state statute. Do we really need another ordinance to dictate all these things that are allowable and not allowable if it's already covered under the state statute?
And I think we should make it clear, and one thing that I learned from your memo and learned through this process is there is nothing in our ordinance or in the state ordinance that prevents a child from riding his bike or learning to ride his bike on the street. I know there was some confusion on that initially, but to me, my interpretation of what I've learned, it's crystal clear. If you're a child, you're learning to ride your bike, the state lets you ride bikes in the street. That's one of the things. And nothing, we couldn't stop that if we wanted to. We don't want to, but it's a state statute.
We want to encourage people to ride bikes and stay out of cars, you know.
Right.
I'll make the motion. We ask the staff to proceed with option 4.
Second.
Motion is second.
So for discussion, I do want to know how we are going to have a balanced approach that people understand that we are not saying that playing in the street is necessarily safe. And how that's what I want to know what we're going to do related to that, though.
Well, we have the state statute, so you want them to like
Yes,
place more prominent placement of this?
I don't know, but I just know that I wanted to make it crystal clear to people that we are not promoting playing in the street and something comes back and now we're talking about something else. So now we're talking about people who are impacting people's quality of life just because of having, you know, back and forth bickering. But I don't want to be talking about something else because now people are misinterpreting. People don't have the state statute, I mean, I do, but people don't have the state statutes walking around with them, and I just have them related to what I do for a living. So I just want to know how we're going to have a balanced approach to promoting health and safety and wellness, which includes being able to get along with our neighbors and not micromanage how people parent. I don't know how to do that.
Maybe your point speaks to how we present it when the ordinance comes back for a vote, because this, I mean, tonight we're just giving a little direction, but it will come back for another public hearing. Would it be a public hearing?
No.
Would not be a public
No.
hearing?
No, sir, it's
Okay.
just an ordinance.
Business?
Right.
I see. It would certainly come before the council again, and we could try to make it clear at that point. Presentation about, you know, we're not, I mean, again, back to what I said earlier, to me, it's not about trying to be permissive or less permissive. It's about trying to get out of the business of micromanaging this, because to me, it seems like it's hard to get right, and we're trying to duplicate what's already in the state statute. And it seems like relying on that's a simpler way to go, enforcing the state law.
And are we going to do that throughout other things here? We're going to be on slippery slope, and the state statute is like the bare minimum, right? And so are we going to try to do better? So, yeah.
Any other discussion on it?
Like your thoughts, Mayor, being a former officer, dealt with this before.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the police, we're community police officers. It's never the intent to go around and just, charge as many people as we can, particularly in these situations right here. But we do try to make sure that safety is first and paramount. But it would make it better if it was clear what officers need to do. It's hard to interpret things just case by case, so there should be like a clear way of just saying we know what to do in this situation. So whatever we need to do. So I'm thinking option 4 for myself would be the way to go. But I do want to go back to how did it get this far to council, going back to the mediation, and if there is ongoing, contention between the neighbors on this issue, I'm more than happy to open my doors to both of you to sit down and talk with both of you to mediate, if you want to do that. So that is open.
And I will let council know something that staff is working on now is a more holistic approach to pedestrian safety and motor vehicle safety, bike safety. There's an initiative called Vision Zero that you might have heard about. We intend to bring a proposal to council at some point with the documentation to actually be a partner in Vision Zero. Vision Zero is an organization that is advocating for changes in local and state law regarding pedestrian and motor vehicle laws, with the goal of 0 fatalities on North Carolina roadways. I think that's something that we should strive for, is 0 fatalities in Apex, and that's through engineering, that's through law enforcement, that's through education, and just getting out there and seeing where problems are, solving the problems, but also then educating both motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, everybody, so they're aware of what their certain responsibilities are when using roadways. So you'll be seeing more about that. Our transportation folks are working on that now. It'll involve a lot of public outreach, public communication about the program, and some events around it. So,
do you anticipate that Project Zero will involve modifications to 1428? Or
no, sir.
It'll just be an education initiative?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And there may be some, as we review our ordinances, there may be some things that we suggest to council for changes. But our engineering staff has been pretty good about, as they see things in our ordinances that we need to change as far as motor vehicle ordinances that we can have locally, they've been bringing those to you pretty consistently.
All right. So I would just say that if we are willing to make things very clear and support people, including mediation, and that you're involved, Mayor, I'll go with this. Otherwise, I probably would say no, because it's just too much fuzziness around this for me. So I'm trusting you with the clarity and you all with staff. Otherwise, I would just be, I just don't see enough in front of me for me to feel comfortable with the action. So.
Okay. So, have a motion discussion. I'll take a vote. Option 4. Moving that direction for staff. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, so order 1. All right.
I voted it.
You said no.
I said no. Oh,
You said
okay.
no.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear.
All right, so it's 4-1.
Yeah, it was quiet. Okay.
All right, so let's move now to there's no new business, closed session. We have two items, requested motion to go into closed session pursuant to, first one is pursuant to NCGS 143.318.11A3 to discuss the handling of matters of Town of Apex versus Beverly Rubin and Beverly Rubin versus Town of Apex et al. Second item pursuant to NCGS 143.318.11A5 to discuss the town's negotiating position for acquisition of real property.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, we have no other business after this. Moving to closed session.
First closed session, exciting. We had a lot of them before, last year.
Ask Miss Killingsworth how much of a party they are. Wow.
Upstream versus downstream issue?
Sorry.
Sorry about that. It's perfect for state law to address it.
Yeah,
And they actually made, like, that would be 5, 6, 10 years down the road.
No, I'm saying they had it. 2 years ago they had it.
Which one?
And they appealed.
You talking about the rules?
Yes.
Oh, well, I mean, they were like 12 years ago and then got killed and re-implemented and pushed off, right?
Delayed.
There's actually, so,
It should be a state rule.
yes, no, I mean, so TJ Cog is having a bunch of meetings now to, they call it re-implementing short life.
Yeah.
So they're pushing to go through a re-implement the rules, but the timeline is like 2025.
Yeah, the problem is it's all voluntary here. I mean, it's just not going to be as good. It's not going to be as good.
I think if we do a program now and then continue to stay with the rules, we can scale back.
I apologize, man. Don't call the police.
So, what should we do with this? Leave it here, Donna?
Yeah, we'll get.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Why don't you start down? What's going on, sir?
How are you? All right.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, how are you doing?
Hey, man.
Gary?
What's up?
Another day in the office.
All right.
You in the office tomorrow? Right here tomorrow?
Am I here tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about downtown. So I'll send you a message. I know you're busy tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to catch up with you tonight.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit.
Okay.
I got some ideas and
Okay, that'd be
I
perfect.
want everything to work together. So I'll send you a note.
Send me a note. I'll be here, I got 11 o'clock. And then, 1, I think.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll send you a note, like say, first thing in the morning.
Okay.
And we'll just figure out a time that works for both of us. Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Should be good for people with bad knees. These were designed by the military. I think they're used, they're used by a portion of the military, so, they just, they're good.
That sounds great, thank you.
That's it. All righty. Make sure everybody else is out, but I'm heading out.
little story is I was walking on the Apex Greenway Community Park, you know, around Lake, I call it Lake Pond or whatever it is, but, and I've gotten so old that I
sent you
can't
an
walk in
email
one
about
direction
Pink
and
Fist.
look
Check your email.
Thank you. So I didn't know that I drifted off in, or we
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
How about doing the Peak Fest tent for us?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of share. I mentioned it at the
Yeah,
thing.
good idea. Okay.
So,
I wanted to,
And I know that.
You didn't do anything.
at the training we were
Yeah,
at.
exactly.
Try to catch
Do you-
myself.
Okay, this is, everything's off, right, Drew?
No, not till you leave.
Oh,
the room.
okay.
Yep, that was our instruction.
I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
well, we're done now. Don't try to be funny.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said if it's not, but I think he gave me one more week. He said, we're going to do this. The first week and a half, it was just like my own thing, and I wasn't immobilizing my thumb. So now I've got immobilized thumb. But, okay, but my fun story. And the reason I came up with this is because we really told because evidently that's where my thing is where those skaters, you know. So it's like, that's a funny story. Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
And he luckily he didn't hurt anybody. He ended up getting killed in part of it, but he wasn't on drugs. Oh, no. You gotta come out of it. But, you know, but it was for years, you know, it got to the point where